Welcome, fellow freaks, geeks, and nostalgic 90s nerds to my channel, Slime and Slashers, where, we talk about everything from Nickelodeon slime to horror movie slashers, but plenty of stuff in between, too. And we talk about stuff like book flippin' wrap-up videos, which is what today's video is. So, I read 13 books in the month of January, probably my best reading month ever. So, after the short intro, we'll come right back and we'll go through all the books I read. So don't go anywhere, because when we come back, we will break it all down. Welcome back, guys! And I guess I'll just address the elephant in the room, because I'm filming and it looks crazy to me. Like, I can't even take it. I don't know if I like it. So my mom just dyed my hair earlier today. I went over to my parents' house. My mom's always the one who dyes my hair with, like, just box dye. Anyway, so it looks a lot, like, darker and weirder, and I'm all freaked out, like, this isn't me. or is it me? I don't know. Anyway, so if you notice my hair is different, it's because it is different. It's dyed. So anyway, it'll just take some getting used to, for you guys probably, and for me, so whatevs. Alright, but let's talk about what you guys came here for, most probably, which is books! Okay, I cannot even believe that I read 13 books in January. That's like an insane number, and by the way, it's a lucky number because I was born on a Friday the 13th, and I was actually born on January, Friday the 13th. So, yes, my birthday month was very successful, and also thematic, because, born on the 13th, read 13 books, yeah, whatever, it all worked out. And I did think you guys might get a kick out of looking at something that I've been using lately. So here are the books we're going to talk about today, real quick. I have a new book planner, and I've been trying to, I haven't really been super successful. As you can see, there's like a mess up here. But I have been trying to write nicer and almost do like faux calligraphy or just like nice block letters even. So I've been practicing my handwriting and stuff and doing different things. Like for February, I did my TBR all nice. See, like the colored in hearts means that I've read it, and the empty ones means I haven't yet. So yes, I'm playing around with like keeping an agenda, I should say. And sorry, I had a cough attack right before we started filming, so I'm like, bleh. I'm like dying. I even made like a little chart, 22 books, and I messed up on the year. Frickin' it looks terrible, but whatever. Otherwise, I color-coded it, I have a key. Anyway, I'm really proud of my little agenda. It's a bookish agenda. I actually bought a few, and I'm gonna save one for next year, so I'm using this one this year. Maybe I could get everything finessed in terms of how I write. But one of the things I did in my agenda was actually write down star ratings, and I'm going to hide them from you because I want to surprise you as we go along. But yes, I am using my trusty agenda. It's on the other side of this, where I have my star ratings all written down and ready to go. So, let's get into it. We had a nice mix of things for January. I'm really proud of the type of books I read because we had some vintage YA. We had some new middle grade. We also had some vintage middle grade, and we had some flippin' new horror, and we had some old horror. So we had it all. It was like a nice mix of things. So really cool. I just thought it was a diverse month overall. It actually was more of a newer leaning month than usual. Usually I don't read newer books as much as older books, but in January I feel like I read quite a few newer horror books, which is unusual for me. But we're going to start off with an oldie. And here is a vintage YA book, and it's specifically a Fear Street book. Look at this. It's a great cover. Alright, so I read The New Year's Party, and yes, I'm talking about it first because it was my very first read of 2022. And I read this for my friend Kelly's book club. You could find her on YouTube and on Instagram at Kelly Hooked on Books. And I would definitely say check her out and check her book club out. Her book club is called the From Hell Book Club. And this month she's reading Elizabeth by Ken Greenhall. And I am still planning on reading that, but I'm waiting till the last minute because I still have so much other stuff to read. And next month, for March, she's going to be reading Exquisite Corpse by Poppy Z. Bright, and I'm going to definitely join in on that. I'm so excited for that. It's going to be so much fun. So anyway, this was her official club read for January, and I did read it. Like I said, I read it around New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. So it was kind of like I read it half in 2020 and half in 2020 Oh, I'm sorry. I'm saying the wrong years. Oh my God. I read it half in 2021 and half in 2022. So it was kind of like my last read and my first read at the same time. Now, this was a typical Fear Street read in that it was easy, it was fun, it was entertaining, it was no thinking necessary. Most all Fear Street books are very entertaining. They really don't differ. You know, even a bad one is still fun. But I will say, in December, I read Silent Night, and that one knocked my socks off. That has to be my favorite Fear Street read that I've read so far. So yeah, I gotta say that one was a little more special than New Year's Party. However, I still had a good time with this, but the difference between the two is I think this one, if you think a little more and you look a little closer, you will start to find some major, like, inconsistencies and plot holes, things you start to question. And so because of that, I was like, whatevs. So I'm just looking at my list to make sure that I remembered right. So I rounded this up to a 4-star rating, but basically it's technically a 3.5-star rating for me. So I think that's pretty decent. Basically 3.5 to 4 to 4.5 to 5. All of that is really enjoyable for me. So you might say like a 3.5 is bad, but it's not. Even a 3-star read for me is like, oh, it was pretty okay. It was pretty good. Not my favorite, but so 3 and 3.5 isn't that bad for me. And in fact, this one was so good I rounded it up because I always have fun with Fear Street reads, even though I've only read a few so far overall. I just think if you're looking for something that is just breezy and also nostalgic, they will never fail. No matter if it's a good or a bad one per se, it's just like a simple, easy, fun time. So yes, I had a perfect time with this, and it felt at least a little appropriate. I will say, it almost felt more Christmassy at times than New Year's Eve-ish, but whatever. It still fit. The next 3 reads we're going to talk about, I'm going to go through rather quickly because I already went into each one of them very in-depth. I talked about each one of these in a live stream discussion, and I will link all 3 discussions down below. So if you missed it, or any of the 3 I should say, you can go back and check it out because I'm very proud of each of these streams which discussed each of these 3 books. Alright, the first book I had a live stream discussion of was Slumber Party by Christopher Pike, and this live stream I was so proud of, and it was a lot of fun. So I wore pajamas, really was just like a t-shirt and, regular pants and some socks, but I wore, PJs because it was a slumber party theme. I also had hot cocoa, and in the live stream chat, we talked about our favorite slumber party snacks, and we talked about our favorite horror movies, but we also really broke down this book in general. And I will say, we all were on the same page, those who were in the live stream discussion chat and me as well. We all had the same opinion, basically, that this was fun and okay, but it was far from Christopher Pike's best book. And, I've only read one other book by Christopher Pike, but I can definitely tell you with 100% certainty that that other book, which was Monster, you could see it behind me, actually, that book was much better. It's, there it is, right there next to Halo. That book was much, much better, much more character development, much more in-depth than Slumber Party. Again, Slumber Party was kind of like a typical point horror book, one that reminds me a lot of a Fear Street book, whereas you just let go, it's nostalgic, it can be cheesy, there is boy drama, just go with the flow and you will enjoy it. Now, a lot of people said that the twist in this book, or the, who wound up being at fault for things that were taking place, they didn't guess it. I did guess who might be at fault at one point, but it still didn't hinder my enjoyment, and overall, I gave this a flippin' 3.5 stars, and I rounded it down to 3. But again, that's not a terrible rating for me, it just means that it was good. It was enjoyable, but it wasn't anything that I might reread, and it wasn't like a gem, like a hidden gem or anything, or a new favorite. So yes, 3.5 stars rounded down to 3 for Goodreads. The next book that I had a live stream discussion for was Stolen Tongues by Felix Blackwell. We really broke down this book very comprehensively, and I had a blast talking with people in the chat. And this book is creepy. I will say, some people are like, it repeats a lot, and I will say that is such a valid criticism. There are parts of the story that do repeat. However, I honestly was creeped out by certain passages in the book that described really unsettling imagery of people sleeping and doing weird things in their sleep, and that's what got to me, because I don't like the idea of asleep next to me and then saying something insane, like off the wall, like, "I'm gonna kill you, bitch." No, that wasn't said in the book, but I'm just giving you an example of something creepy that somebody next to you sleeping might say that would freak you frickin' out. And so, along that same vein, there was stuff like that going on in this book, and I will say it was rather enjoyable. I will remember this read for a long time. There are some controversial things about this book, mainly about some character representation, should certain characters have been written the way they were, etc., etc. I talk about that in my live stream discussion. I break that down, and I think I discussed that in a pretty respectful way, or at least I hope I did, but I liked that I decided to address it instead of just skimming over what some people were kind of upset by, and I could see why they would be upset by it in some cases. It didn't bother me personally so much, but again, I'm not, somebody of that group who would be upset by it. So you really gotta look at my discussion to find out what I'm talking about. I don't want to go into things too much now because I literally had like a whole long ass discussion about it, like I said. And I actually listened to a very long interview with the author, Felix Blackwell. It was on a YouTube channel that was like about video games and stuff. But they talked about this book at length, and I basically gave some notes that I discovered after watching that interview, and I talked about that in my live stream discussion too. This book, creepy, had some flaws, but overall super effective. I would definitely recommend it. I don't feel hesitant at all in recommending it to most people. I really think that if you're looking for creepy imagery, this has you covered, and it's a very cold feeling book, so it's a perfect winter read. So I gave this a pretty darn high rating. It just missed being perfect though, so I gave it a 4.5 star out of 5 rating, and I rounded it up to 5 for Goodreads. So it was almost a 5-star book for me, but it just missed the mark because of some of the repetitiveness of the story. However, the scare factor really was what kind of made me give it a higher rating, and it was enjoyable. I do recommend it. Next up, I read Misery by Stephen King, and I actually gave this a 5-star rating. However, I don't know. It was amazing. It was a wonderful King read. I highly recommend it, but I will say I'm torn on if I should give it a 4.5-star rating or a true 5-star rating. I don't know, because I feel like the beginning, it just felt like it was really hard to get through for me, but it wasn't because of King. The story really was entertaining. The part that was tough for me was because I had seen the movie so many times that I was kind of familiar with things. But there are things in there, if you've seen the movie, like I had before I read the book, but you haven't read the book, I still suggest picking it up because it was fabulous. I marked so many passages in here. The book just was so well written, and you do get a lot of depth, and there are a lot of differences between the movie and the book itself. And so it's definitely worth picking up the book, even if you've seen the movie. And even if you've seen the movie multiple times, still give the book a chance. But I'm just thinking that, because I felt like it was slower in the beginning, I should technically rate it more like a 4.5. Was it a true 5-star? It's just about me and how I feel personally. I'm really so conflicted on what makes a 5-star read for me. I still haven't really figured that out completely. So I don't know. I'm still torn, like, is it really a 4.5 or a 5? But let's just say it's up there, and it was great. It was awesome. I had a good time, and I read this because I know I've mentioned this many times, but I'm going to repeat it in case anybody is new here. My friend Kat and I are doing this year-long project this year, and it's called The Year of King. And we're going to be reading, and we already started with Misery, which was our first read of the year. We read a King novel in most cases, but in some cases, for some months of this year, we will be reading a King short story, and in very few cases, we're going to be reading more than one short story. I know one of our months we're reading 3 King short stories, but they're all very short. And so we already announced our whole lineup for the entire year, and we did that in a video that we did together that's released on my channel right now. I will link that video down below so that you can catch it in case you missed it, and you could plan ahead in case you do want to read any of these Kings along with us. But we're also not only reading the King work, we're not only reading the novel or the short story, or stories in some cases, we're also watching the adaptation for each month. And at the end of the month, we've been having a live stream discussion. So we had a Misery discussion where we talked about the book at length, and we also discussed the movie, and we talked about the differences between the two, the similarities, was it a good adaptation, what did the book say that the movie did not, etc., etc. I'm really proud of that chat. I hope you'll check it out. If you missed it, I'll link it down below. So this was such a fun project, and I'm so pumped to keep going with this. But yeah, technically 5 stars as of now, but I don't know, it's somewhere between 4.5 and 5. I don't really know, whatever. It was just a good time, a great winter read, and I do recommend it very highly. The next book I'm going to talk about, I don't have a physical copy of, but because we're talking about King, I'm going to mention the King book that's actually our read for February. So Kat and I are reading Gerald's Game for February for our Year of King project, and I haven't watched the adaptation yet. There's a Netflix movie that, you know, is based on Stephen King's book. So I'm going to watch that this week because Kat and I are going to be releasing our live stream discussion. We're going to be having a live chat about it very soon on Sunday, February 27th at 2 p.m. Central Time. So please mark your calendars. I'm going to be setting the link up very soon so you guys can set reminders. But for now, at least mark your calendar so that you know it's going to be coming up and you could save the time and the date. But I'm so pumped about it. I don't want to go too much into what I thought about Gerald's Game, because I feel like that would be spoiling what I'm going to say in the chat with Kat. So yes, that I'm not going to give you my rating on right now. You'll have to tune in to the live stream for it. But yes, technically it's our February read, but I read it back in January, and I read it at the very end of the month. It was my last read of, well, it was almost my last read. I think it was my second to last, technically, of January. So yes, it was really psychological. You know, there was a lot going on in a certain character's head, and we will break all of it down on, if you're watching this before the stream, on Sunday. If you're watching it after, I'm sure I will go back and link it below after the chat has already happened. The next book I read was The Patient by Jasper DeWitt. This book was awesome. This was pretty creepy, and it was exciting, and I enjoyed the story very much. And some people were complaining, I saw in Goodreads in some reviews, some people were complaining that the ending, you know, they didn't like it. They were like, what the hell's going on at the end? But you have to really read close at the end, and if you read close and pay attention, you might catch that there's stuff going on at the end. So you have to really pay attention. But yes, I loved the ending to this. I was like, what the hell? Because if you really read into it, you will understand what's going on, and yeah. It's a good ending, at least in my opinion. I'm like, what? So, it's a very interesting story. Essentially, this is formatted like a group of online posts written by a real-life, like, therapist or psychologist. And he's talking about this case that he was a part of, and it's traumatized him, essentially. And so, we're following the story like we are one of the readers, like, let's say on Reddit or something. That's what it reminds me of. And he's writing it, and it's all about how this patient, hence the name, The Patient, it was really creepy and no one wanted to mess with him, and anyone who interacted with this patient, bad things would happen to whoever got too close to him. But this doctor was like, no, I want to see if I can treat him. And then stuff, you know, happens from there. I don't want to give too much away because the less you know, the better, I think. And I went into this pretty blind. I will say I really thoroughly enjoyed it. I gave it a 4 stars out of 5. It was a good time. And I actually recently saw that Gabby Reeds gave this as one of like her horror recommendations. She thought this was super scary. She loved it. So yes, not only did she like it, I also liked it. I think she rated it higher than me, but I still really, a 4-star rating from me is very good. So I very much enjoyed it and I do recommend it, especially if you like things that are a little, you know, creepy and psychological, but also other stuff's going down. I don't know. Just check it out for yourself. I don't want to give too much away. That's why I'm being kind of vague. The next book I read was Don't Call at All by Robbie Miles, and look at this fantastic cover. So wonderful. This is a new middle grade book, but it's very nostalgic in that it's so reminiscent of a Goosebumps book. It's definitely got a Goosebumps vibe, and I know that's what Robbie was going for, and I really, really enjoyed it. It's about a kid who really wants a cell phone, but his parents won't let him get one, and he actually is gifted a mysterious cell phone, and stuff devolves from there. It kind of takes on a kind of be careful what you wish for type of scenario, and I like that a lot. I thought it was a really well done story, very entertaining. If you're a fan of reading middle grade books, I would totally recommend it. I know reading middle grade as an adult is not for everyone. However, it is for me. I really like doing that. And I do want to say that Robbie sent me recently his arc of his new book, Time Watchers, which goes on sale on March 1st, I believe it is, and I cannot wait to read it. I am waiting until March to read it, even though that it'll be out by then, but I'm hoping, you know, once it's out and available and I talk about it on my channel during that month, that people will go and buy it, and it'll be available by the time I'm talking about it. So it'll all work out timing-wise, I think. So I am so happy and excited to dig into that one. And he did say it was kind of different than this one, but I'm still pumped for it because I think his writing is really good and it can only get even better from this book onward, because this was his first book. This was just so fun. If you like Goosebumps, and again, middle grade type of reads, definitely check this out. I had a blast with it. And again, I like reading middle grade books or even vintage YA books. Sometimes new YA, not as much with newer YA, but in some cases, yes. I like reading those in between reading adult reads, whether that be adult horror reads or just adult general reading. I think it's a perfect way to break up other reading. You know, you just got done with a long book and you're like, ugh, it took forever. Even if it was enjoyable, like, for instance, for February, for this month, I read Geek Love by Katherine Dunn. Loved it. Spoiler alert, because my wrap-up for February is not going to come for a while, but I freaking loved that book. But it was long, and I was like, I need something else, and that's why sometimes middle-grade books can help break that up. And I didn't read a middle-grade book after it, and I think I should have, because I almost got into a slump, because I picked up with Richard Lehman's Funland right after Geek Love, and that's another long book, and I was already struggling with that one, because it was boring. And anyway, that's another spoiler for some of my February wrap-up, but it was so boring. It's such a letdown after my first Lehman read, which was amazing, which was Endless Night. Funland, no, don't freaking read that one if you're trying out Lehman, just because I think it was really boring. But, it just did not start off with a bang like Endless Night did. But yeah, I could have used a middle grade book like this in between to break it up. But yeah, I did not read one in between. I should have read one of my carnival themed middle grade books, but I'm trying to save that for the end of the month. But yes, anyway, that is why middle grade books, or even vintage YA, like I said, those are great reads for in between long books like I just mentioned. But yeah, this was so enjoyable. I gave it 4.5 stars. I'm going to round it up on Goodreads. So much fun. I haven't officially written my review yet, but I'm going to. And I just loved it so much. And thank you, Robbie, if you're watching, for sending me Time Watchers. I can't wait to get to it. I'm very excited, and it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. These next few books I'm going to talk about, I don't have a physical copy of, because a lot of them I read on my Kindle, which I got a Kindle for Christmas, and it's a Kindle Paperwhite, and I really like it. I haven't used it a lot this month because I have a lot of books that I'm reading for my readathon that I have physically that I don't have on my Kindle. But in January, I definitely used it a lot, and I'm going to continue using it going forward. But I read a lot on the Kindle flippin' in January, and I'm very happy with it. So one of the books I read on the Kindle, and I also listened to it on audiobook at the same time, was Dead Mountain. And this is a nonfiction book, and it's the first nonfiction book I've read in a long time. And it's the story of these mountaineers who ended up dying on this hike, even though they were experienced, and no one knew why. There was mysterious circumstances surrounding their death, and this author, this present-day author, was going back and trying to almost look for clues on their trail, look back at the historical documents and anyone who might have known the hikers, and try to put the puzzle pieces together and figure out what actually happened to them, because it's very unexplained, or it was unexplained. Now there's theories about what happened, but read the book to find out what the theory is. But yeah, at the time, we're talking about, like, way in the past, like the 50s, this accident happened, and the author is writing this in the 2000s, and he's like, yeah, I want to figure out how this happened and what happened to them and what caused them to, basically, essentially, they're camping up on the mountain during their hike, and they should have been fine, but they race out of their tent. In fact, there's evidence that they cut out of their tent with a knife, and they ran out without being properly dressed for the cold. So some of them were just in socks with no boots. Some of them didn't even have, like, their winter coats on. It's like, what the hell? Why would you go in, like, insanely freezing temperatures and you're experienced and know what the hell you're doing? And they rolled out a whole bunch of stuff. Some people were even saying, is this the government, yada yada. Anyway, the book looks at all of that, and I thought it was interesting. However, it wasn't my favorite read. In fact, I used to really love nonfiction, and this was not my favorite nonfiction book, but I actually read this for my private book club that I run, and a lot of people seemed to have the same feelings as me, but I think I liked it a little less than them. There were some people who were like, yeah, this is really fun, I really liked it. So overall, I gave it a 3.5 star rating, which I seem to have given a lot of books 3.5 stars, I'm looking here, but 3.5 stars, and I'm rounding it down for Goodreads to a 3. So just like with some of the other reads I mentioned, like Slumber Party, it doesn't mean that I didn't like it. It doesn't mean 3.5 rounded down means that it was terrible. It just means that it wasn't my favorite, but I'm still glad I read it. And I mean, I guess I would say that even about a 2-star book at some points, but for instance, Funland. I really didn't like that. I'm not even going to give it a 3. And I would say I would have rather used my time for something else. So I don't regret it, but at the same time, if I knew how bad it would have been, like, if I really realized how much I was going to dislike it, I probably would have decided to read something else instead. So, let's just put it that way. So yes, a 3-star, or technically a 3.5 rounded down, is not that bad. So Dead Mountain, still glad I checked it out, and I'm glad that my book club really mostly enjoyed it, but they gave it around the same rating as me, for the most part. Alright, so that one was decent, and that was definitely on my Kindle / also audiobook. Another book I read on my Kindle would be Rites of Extinction by Matt Serafini. And I gotta say, so this one I went in with super high expectations because I loved the other book I read by Matt Serafini in 2021, last year. I read his book Under the Blade and was just blown away. That is a slasher type of book, but it has other elements to it as well. It's not just a mere simple slasher book. It's very, I don't know, multifaceted. I loved that read. And so going into Rites of Extinction, I had heard good things. I had high expectations because I knew I liked his other book. And so to me, it almost was like, I wish I would have gone in with low expectations because I did not like the beginning. I think the reason I didn't like the beginning is because we're following this detective character and she is on the hunt for somebody, and you kind of put together from things she's thinking that she's lost someone close to her, and then eventually you end up putting together that it's her daughter, and she's trying to, like, find out, what exactly happened and why, and she's hunting down the person responsible, essentially. But halfway through, or a little after halfway through, I guess, it started to take a turn and get crazy, and I really liked it. So I didn't like the detective aspect of it, and I didn't like how she was having these, like, visions or episodes, and I was like, what is going on? This is weird. It was confusing me. But, like, later you start to put the pieces together, and then it starts to become good. So it was, like, 2 different reading experiences. I didn't like the beginning, and I was just thinking, like, oh my god, this is nothing like Under the Blade, in a way. I was like, I don't like the vibe. I don't like the type of story it is. But then we get halfway, or a little past halfway, I don't know why I keep correcting myself, and then beyond, and I was like, yeah, this is crazy. So I loved the last half. So it was so hard to rate this because, again, 2 different experiences, the beginning and the end. So overall, enjoyable. I gave it a 3.5 star rating, but I'm rounding it up for Goodreads to 4 stars. So it was more enjoyable than Dead Mountain. It was more enjoyable than Slumber Party. I was really satisfied with the ending. I did think it was gory and bloody. I would say I recommend it. Especially if you don't mind detective type of stories. It wasn't that I don't like that at all. It's not like that. It's just that is not one of my favorite elements of a horror book because it reminds me more of, like, thrillers. And I don't dislike thrillers. They're just, I'm really more into, like, I like supernatural horror. I like, random other horror. I like slasher books as well, which can have supernatural elements to it, or it could just be people killing people, but I don't know. Sometimes if it leans too heavy into the detective thing, I'm not a big fan of it, but usually I could, like, shrug it off. It was that combined with these weird episodes she was having where I was just getting confused, like, what was going on. But once I started to understand more, I had to be more patient, essentially, and then it started to pay off, and I was like, okay, yeah, I get it. But yes, so overall, very happy with the ending, and I'm glad I ended up giving it a chance, and I'm glad it ended up almost, like, redeeming itself, because I think most people wouldn't have a problem with the beginning like I did. I think it's a personal thing, but yeah, I'm just glad that, at least for me, it turned around. I think for you guys, you might like it all the way through. So yeah, pick it up if you're interested and intrigued. I don't want to say too much more besides the vague premise, because it's a shorter book, and, shorter books, I don't like to give too much away. The next shorter book that I read on my Kindle would be The Mud Ballad, and this one was so much fun. In fact, it actually had a carnival type of vibe because one of the main characters was a conjoined twin, And this isn't giving anything away because if you read the description, it's right there. One of the twins wants to be separated from the other. And then a lot of stuff goes down after that. And a lot of stuff goes down also with supernatural elements, but also all of it takes place in this muddy, gross, grungy town where the people are crazy. Not only are there pig fights in this town for entertainment, like pigs. Like, I guess killer pigs, because they're pretty mean, at least described in the story. It seems like they're mean, the way it was described. And also, kids are fighting in the story. These orphan kids are fighting. And that's not really giving things away. It's just, that's pretty early on. There's a lot more to discover for yourself if you read the book. But the part that made me think of, like, carnival type of theme is the twins who basically were a part of a freak show and a traveling carnival. So that would have totally gone with my readathon that I'm doing this month for February. But I read it in January. And I actually read it because I watched Alex, the Bookubus's, her wrap-up of 2021 where she talked about some of her favorite reads, and she rated that one fairly highly, and so I was like, I'm gonna check it out. It sounds like really interesting. The cover is amazing, by the way, for the Mud Ballad. I give it a 4-star rating. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more than The Rites of Extinction. I enjoyed it quite a bit more than some of the other books I read. It was really good. Overall, January was a good reading month, but there were some that were better than others, of course, and Mud Ballad was one of the better ones that I really loved. Alright, I'm gonna save the most controversial one for last, because bleh, it's hard to talk about. Alright, so 2 that I physically have that I'm gonna talk about. First, I'm gonna talk about my very first graveyard school read. This is like a Goosebump knockoff book from the 90s. And look how great the cover is, though. I love it. And it says, The Abominable Snow Monster, and it's written by Tom B. Stone. It's gotta be like a pen name or something. It's amazing. Alright, so this was published in 1995, and the funny thing is, so I read this one. I'm going to give you my ratings in a second and my thoughts in a second, but I read this one, but I also read a very similar book in terms of cover design. I read Snow Day, which is Spine Tingler's number 7, and this is by M.T. Coffin, also not a real person's name. It's obviously fake. M.T. Coffin, like empty coffin, like there's nothing in the coffin. Anyway, it's great. I love it. So you see Snowman on both covers. The difference is this one was about a literal, like, monster snowman. This one was not anything about a snowman. So the cover's deceiving, but this one had so many layers to it, and it was really surprising the things that were talked about in terms of the concepts of the plot that were discussed for a middle grade book. This was so wild and out there and strange for a middle grade book. I really loved this one. Now, this one was fun for what it was. Again, I have no problem reading middle grade books. To me, you go in with the mindset of, you can't take this at, like, the age level you're on. You can't take it at, like, an advanced level. You can't go into it thinking you're going to be reading some kind of masterpiece. Take it for what it is. A book written for kids and geared towards kids. So if you could put yourself back in that mindset, or if you have kids yourself, then yes, maybe you should pick this one up, or maybe you should look for this one. This one, again, was way more simple, but I still had fun. So this one I rated... let me look at my list here because I don't really remember off the top of my head. I gave it just a flat 3 stars. Again, nothing overly special about it, but still fun. And still thematic for January because I was going for like a winter type of theme, a cold theme. This definitely had some cold imagery, and you had a creepy snowman and a creepy eye, and I really would love to check out more books in the Graveyard School series. So I'm gonna be on the hunt for more because I think I only have like 2 or 3 right now. I know I got one from Cameron Chaney. Thank you, Cameron. Of course, I'm talking about Library Macabre. I will link his channel below, and I'll also link Alex's channel below, who I referenced earlier. And finally, Snow Day, like I said, there was lots of stuff going on. What does the back of the book even say here?
The kids all cheer when the bus driver tells them the schools have been closed because of the snow, but the bus can't make it through the blinding blizzard, and soon they are trapped in the freezing cold school bus. Through the wind and the snowflakes, someone sees lights on in an old farmhouse, and it looks warm and cozy, but what they find inside doesn't make them feel safe at all. Strange portraits with glistening red eyes stare down at them, and when the kids go to the kitchen for something to eat, they have to pull open the heavy steel door of the freezer, and that's just when the lights go out.
the description is so vague too, compared to what actually is going on in the story. This was just weird, but I liked it, and I actually gave it a higher rating than the other one. So this one I gave a 3.5-star rating, and I'm gonna round it actually up to 4 stars on Goodreads, just because it was an interesting premise. But I will say, if you're going in looking for monster snowmen, this is not gonna have that. That's not what this was about. The weather outside is frightful. And in the book, it is, very cold outside, and they do describe that. So this also fit my very cold theme, my winter theme. So this was fun, and I did like it a lot. Again, I gave it a higher rating. Just to compare one more time, 3 stars, 3.5 stars, and I'm going to be rounding it up. And I think I actually already rated it on my Goodreads. And I'm actually powering up my computer because I want to read you my Goodreads review for this last book I'm going to talk about. I think I haven't forgot any of the books that I read. So this should be the 13th book, but it was not the last book I read in January, but I'm just talking about it last because it's kind of notorious and crazy, and I can't believe I read it. So I read Cows, and it's just well known for being gross and disturbing and out there and wacky and weird. In fact, it's on a lot of people's most disturbing books list. I can't even believe I wanted to read it. I feel like the reason I chose to try to read it was I was like, okay, can I do it? I don't know, I guess I was looking for stuff to just throw into my TBR. I kind of was very loose with my TBR for January. I left room to add things and to just mood read for once, because this whole year essentially is going to be planned out with my reading. I have a lot of themes for certain months where I'm going to try to conform my reading list to match the theme, and so that leaves little room for mood reading. So January was filled with mood reading, and Cows I was just thinking about, can I handle something of this nature, something this notorious, something this disturbing? And I'm proud to say that I did handle it, and fairly well. Now don't get me wrong, there were some really gross frickin' parts. In fact, I'm mainly talking about shit. I'm sorry to curse, but there was so much shit featured in this book. There was metaphorical shit, and my review is all cutesy about this part. When I read to you, you'll see what I mean. There's stuff that's going on where it makes you think the characters just, there's metaphors in there for what is happening literally is not really what's really happening. There's metaphors happening, essentially. And so there's a lot of that shit going on, metaphorical shit, but there's also literal shit stuff going on in the book. Oh my god, I haven't read about shit, literal feces, this much ever in my life. And that's the part I would say, holy shit, not to say it again, holy crap, that's still bad. You have to be careful before you go into reading this. One, it's not for everybody. If you're not into extreme horror, if you're not into disturbing stuff, if you are afraid you possibly will get triggered, look up trigger warnings, because hell, this has it all probably. All the triggers you could imagine. There's stuff happening with Cows that is sexual. There is stuff happening with Cows that is, violent. There is stuff happening with people that is violent. There's stuff happening with scopes that are gross. There's, like I said, stuff happening with literal feces that is beyond gross, and it happens more than once. And I'm gonna, without further ado, I'm gonna go grab my computer and just read you the review, because I feel like my review was thought out. It was written to the best of my ability, so here it is. Here's what I thought, and it's the best way to sum it up. I honestly don't even know how to rate this book. There is a definite underlying message to the story, which was very clear to me as I was reading. And I did find myself pondering over it long after I had finished. I did find parts of the book's message to be fascinating, and overall, the writing itself is well done. At the same time, if I had to choose one word to describe this book, it would be the word shit. I don't mean the book itself was terrible or shit, but that this story features tons of shit, both literal shit, yes, feces, and content I describe as metaphorical shit as well. All of the metaphorical stuff was fine, of course. There are many instances in the book, both during extreme and non-extreme scenes, where you can find symbolic meaning or glean hidden messages from the writing. But the multiple descriptions of actual feces in the book is pretty hardcore and made it difficult to read at times. I didn't think it was possible for one book to contain so much vivid and detailed descriptions of crap, but here we are. The reason I even decided to read Cows was just to see if I would be able to actually get through it. There was a lot of buzz around this one for being disturbing and off-putting. I am happy to say that I passed my self-imposed test. In that way, I am really glad I read it, and I don't think it is all extreme just to be extreme, as there is at least some kind of underlying message. However, I feel like the author went overboard at times. He writes multiple scenes where some disturbing content that already happened in the book at least once is repeated and described again. I thought that could have been cut down a little bit. Cows contains every trigger you could think of. Clearly, this book would only appeal to those who are okay with reading about the most off-putting types of things. But is the message conveyed in the book worth sloshing through so many gross and sickening passages? I feel like the answer to that is very subjective and would differ for each individual reader, even for those who are no strangers to reading disturbing or extreme horror fiction. So, overall, I am not recommending this per se, but I would never tell someone not to read a book either. I always think it's best for every reader to try something out if intrigued, and then judge it for themselves. Just be warned, I am not joking when I say there is a shitload of crap in this book. It is described in excruciating detail numerous times throughout the book, and is featured in the story in different ways. This may be the most ridiculous and crass review that I've ever written on Goodreads thus far. I feel like this kind of review is okay though for a book such as Cows. I was definitely trying to be cutesy with the literal and metaphorical shit part of my analysis, my attempts at being clever notwithstanding. Everything I wrote is still accurate and represents my true thoughts concerning the book. And so yeah, I did find that I was happy that I read it. So looking back now that I've had some time, I'm still glad that I checked it out. I'm not like regretting that I read it. Like, it's not like a Funland type of situation where I was like, I could have spent my time better. I actually probably will think about this read for a while, unfortunately, some of the gross parts. But like I said, it did have a message. I just don't know if that message would be worth it to some readers. Like, you know, worth slogging through all that stuff, as I said. Now, I will read a comment by my friend Mr. Morningstar, who has a wonderful YouTube channel. I will link his channel down below, but he said, I loved this book, as well as High Life. I also greatly disliked both books. They are contradictory experiences to suffer through. Stoke is as hilarious as he is depraved, and therefore his books are pretty fun to read. Ridiculous, yet somehow insightful. Juvenile, but wise. Bloody and full of excrement and other filth. Agreed, though. Love it or hate it, Cows is a total shit show. His comment is fabulous and is very representative of the book as well, just like my review was. And I will agree, there is definitely some underlying humor that, you know, you could see is thrown in there, but there's also just some things that didn't need to be repeated that was like, once for the extremeness was enough. We don't need it again and again, like, described to us, some of the stuff that goes on here. Mainly some of the stuff with the cows, and mainly some of the stuff with the poo. That's the stuff I'm talking about that happens more than once, and I'm like, what's going on here? But yeah, I don't regret it at all, I will say. I do find myself feeling happy that I read it somehow, and I can't believe I'm saying that. I'm insane, I guess. I don't know. But, yeah, I would say if you're into extreme horror, there's no harm in checking it out. But if you're not into extreme horror, just pass it up. Or if you're intrigued at all, definitely look up trigger warnings if you're somebody who might have a few triggers. Because yes, this has almost everything you could think of. There's some sad stuff, with animals. I'm not just talking about cows. There's like stuff with a dog who is beaten at one point, not by our main character, but by someone else, and that's really sad. And then other stuff too. So yes, be careful with all of that. I just want to warn you on that, but yes. I can't believe I made it through. I can't believe I read Cows. I just can't even believe it. Anyway, I would say, you know, reader beware. It's kind of like, you know, kind of like Goosebumps, but not fun. I mean, the book's not like Goosebumps, but like the idea of reader beware instead of viewer beware. You're in for a scare. You might be in for a scare, or you might be in for some barfing, because there's some gross shit in there. Again, I don't mean to keep referencing that word, but I mean, it just happens. It's so easy to associate that word with the book Cows in different ways, but yes, I can't even believe it. Alright, so that was my month of reading, and I am actually really happy with my productivity for January, and I don't think February is going as well in terms of the amount of books, but I will just give you a spoiler that I've had 2 5-star reads in February, and I've had a 3.5-star read, and I've also had a 4-star read. So yes, there's been all kinds of, I'm not telling you what's what though, so what got what rating, I don't know. There's been some good reads so far. I've been very happy with my readathon stuff. I'm in a little reading slump right now. I'm going through this book that I'm really enjoying, but like I'm taking so long reading it just because I don't feel like reading. I just think it's because life stuff is going on, and it's been a really hard couple of weeks. What I'm reading is Clown Flesh by Tim Curran, and it is marvelous if you like gore. I don't mean to be jumping ahead to February wrap-up, which I'm not wrapping anything up. I'm just giving you guys a glimpse at what I'm reading currently. So yeah, this is awesome. It's definitely matching up to the cover. Like, there's some gory stuff in here, and it's really interesting. And I think people who were disappointed in Dead White by Alan Ryan, which is supposed to be about a town that gets snowed in, and there's like this terrible blizzard that cuts off the town, and then they're invaded by this like circus where there's all these clowns that are very evil and kill people. That's like that, but I heard that it's not action-packed enough. This is like the corrected version or something, because this is so action-packed in terms of clowns are freaking killing people left and right, but what is going on really? Is it really clowns? What's happening? You know, I'm still in the middle of figuring things out, because obviously I'm in the middle of the story itself, and yeah, I'm just loving it. I just wish I wasn't in such a slumpy mood. But it has nothing to do with the book itself. It has to do with, like, my mood, not, like, the content of what I'm reading. And I did want to show you guys my new reading journal. So, here's my Clown Flesh notes. Look, there's a smiley. I was going to try to draw a clown, but I was like, I don't know how to draw a clown. So, I just drew a smiley instead, which is dumb. But let me show you the cover of the reading journal, which I basically read horror. So, this is the weirdest reading journal for anyone who reads horror ever. It's a Winnie the Pooh. It's a Winnie the Pooh reading journal that's filled with horrific notes. So it says kindness always, and it's got cute little Piglet. I feel like Piglet is my spirit animal if he were a real animal. But yes, Piglet and Pooh, kindness. And there's little tabs, and like each one is like a Winnie the Pooh character. We got Eeyore, we got Piglet, we got Tigger. So yeah, let me show you. I know it's hard to see. It's hard to see a little bit, too, because it's, like, translucent and stuff. But, so I'm just gonna go through. Unfortunately, I did not take notes for January books in this notebook because I got it recently. But I'm going to, for the rest of the year, try to take a little bit of notes on each book that I read. So, hopefully that will keep me organized and, like, let my wrap-ups be even more thorough. And I did want to show you guys some special book mail before I signed off. So here we go, some special book mail right now. I want to give a special shout out and thank you to Lily Sparks, the author of this book. She sent me a free hardcover copy of her awesome novel, Teen Killers Club. I say awesome novel. It looks awesome. I haven't read it yet, so I can't attest to the inside, but I feel pretty good about it, and I am going to read it and do a review on it, but I'm saving it for like my summer slasher type of readathon later on in the year during our summertime. I think it's either going to take place in June or August. And she's got another book coming out that's the sequel to this, and so it'll be perfect timing. I'm going to read the first one, then she's going to put me on the list for the ARC for the second one if I like it. So thank you so much for sending over this copy, Lily. I really appreciate it, and I cannot wait to read it, and it's a gorgeous book. I'm just so happy to own it. Look at the beautiful colors. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. It's more of a YA type of read. And she emailed me asking if I would like a copy. And she said, if you like Christopher Pike, you might like my book. And so I was like, hey, why not? I do like Christopher Pike. At least the 2 books I've read so far, I've basically enjoyed. I know I was kind of saying Slumber Party wasn't my favorite, but Monster definitely was a favorite read of 2021 when I read it last year. So yeah, I am excited and I can't wait to see what I think about it. And I will let you guys know because I'll be bringing you along on the journey when I read this. Next up, a very special thank you to my wonderful friend Rachel, who's in my book club. She sent me a birthday present. She sent me a beautiful hardcover copy of Slewfoot by Brahm, and of course I'm getting fingerprints all over it because these are beautiful like matte type of books, and like that kind of absorbs the oils in your hand, so I have to like wipe it off. But yes, Slewfoot, look how beautiful. So beautiful. Oh my god, so beautiful. And she sent me a sweet note with it and everything. Ugh, I cannot wait to read this. I don't know when, but it's also got wonderful illustrations on the inside. I've actually heard great things about Krampus. I think it's called Krampus the Yule Lord. The Yule Lord. I can speak, I swear. That's also by Brahm, I believe, but yeah. Look at that. Oh, look at that. Wow, that's creepy. So yes, thank you so much, Rachel. I love it so much. She is the biggest sweetheart. I love her. I'm so glad she joined my book club and that we've connected over this past, few months. She's awesome. I was gonna say over this year, but it was actually last year, so I can't say that. It was actually last year, not this year. So it still feels like 2021 sometimes, and that's why I say the wrong year sometimes, and I'm all like confused about the year. I'm sure you guys have that too. So now I could show you my star rating page for the entire month. I am not happy with how I drew the banner, but maybe next time I will do a little better of a job. And I'm not really happy with my, writing either. But I'm working on getting better on my print and stuff. But yes, you could see I had it all nice and neat right here. And by the way, I know I didn't give a rating for cows, and that's because I didn't rate it. I don't know how to rate it. I put a question mark here. I honestly don't know what to give cows. I mean, I feel weird giving it a 4 or 4.5. I feel weird. I don't know. I don't know what to give it. So I'd rather just give it nothing for right now. But just say, like, you might want to, look it up before just diving into it and saying, Kelsi's read it, so I'm just going to read it because she said to read it. I'm not saying to necessarily read it. I would say, like, definitely, like I said before, reader beware. Just, it's a risk. It definitely is a risk because I don't know if it's for everyone. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's not for most people. It's definitely not for most people, I'm pretty sure. Alright, so again, I'm a little bit into my February TBR, kind of doing some more reading. We only have a few days left in February, and I need to freaking speed up my reading. I need to get going on Clown Flesh. But yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. I really appreciate your time and that you spend it with me. It means so much, and I truly, truly value it and appreciate it. I know I say that a lot, and I know it might come off as corny or cheesy to you, but I 100% mean it. And I've just been so fortunate to connect with so many people through this fun YouTube journey that I've been on. And I will say that it's so cool to connect with people and then actually get to meet some people in person because I am about to meet up with one of my favorite people in the entire world. Or at least in like the Booktube, YouTube world. And that is Cameron Janie. We're going to be meeting up, and so, or at least hopefully, as long as nothing pops up and no obstacles happen or anything. But yeah, I am so pumped because we might go book shopping. And how much fun would that be? Books, books, books. And, bookish people. And bookish people are the best people, I think. But I also love movie people. So please don't be offended if you also like movies, because I do too. Honestly, the best people are any people who are freaks, geeks, or 90s nostalgic nerds like me. So anybody who likes any of that stuff is A-okay in my book. But again, guys, thanks once more for spending your time with me. I hope you have a good rest of the day or evening, depending on when you're watching this. And like I said, that's it for me. Till next time, you guys know what you can do. Keep on killing it. Bye, guys.